Welcome, everyone. Fruits of the Orchard. This week, Parshat Vayeira. And I want to start with something that was discussed last week. And that was a midrash that I brought, that when Avram was in the process of, call it, discovering that there was one God, but at one point, he felt the confusion of the world, the hefkarut, everything seemed very chaotic. And he called out from his heart, who is in charge of all of this? Who is the Bala Bira? Who's the governor of the capital city? And God responded, and it says that he appeared upon him. And for those who checked your WhatsApp this week, so I got my grammar mixed up, and Toby, who I see is online, questioned me. And at the time, I didn't hear what she was saying, but afterwards, my wife and my son pointed out to me that she was actually correct. And so the whole point was the Ishbitzer Rabbi and Reb Shlomo points out that it says that God appeared upon him. So I thought that the word was love instead of alav. But it turns out it was just the opposite, like Toby was saying, that the midrash, and I looked at, my son found it for me, on the inside, it says that he appeared upon him. And the whole point of the Ishbitzer was that we would expect it to say that God appeared to him, but it said that he appeared upon him. And so the Ishbitzer Rebbe explained what that meant was that God was putting it on him, that if you have discovered that there's one God and you now understand that there's one God, it's on you to share that with the whole world. That was the main point. And then I put on the WhatsApp that I got the two words mixed up between Elav and Alav. But what's interesting is when I started preparing for this week's class, so one of the Torahs on page 60 is about the word Elav. But we're going to get there in a minute. But I want to start with the first verse in this week's Parsha, where it says, Vayeira Elav, he appeared. It doesn't even say God appeared. It says he appeared. Vayeira Allah, no, excuse me. Vayeira Alav Hashem, Alonei Mamre, Vehu Yoshev Petach Ohel, Kechom Hayom. That it says God appeared to him, but it doesn't say God appeared to Abraham. It says he appeared to him in the place called Alonei Mamre. Alonei is an oak tree, in the oak trees of Mamre. And Avram was sitting at the opening of the tent, like the heat of the day. So it's interesting, and I attribute it to my son, because last week we had this whole discussion between Elav and Alav, to him and upon him. So here it says God appeared to him. But the amazing thing is, in the Targum Yerushalmi, there's three, call it famous translations of the Hebrew into Aramaic. There's the most famous, which is Onkelos, and then there's Targum Yonatan, and then there's Targum Yerushalmi. And each one in their own way it's not just a translation, it's also an explanation of the text through the translation into Aramaic. Aramaic is call it a sister language to Hebrew. So in the Targum Yerushalmi, quite amazingly, he translates a love as a love. And when I saw it, it was like, oh my gosh, this is like a follow-up of what we were discussing last week. So the whole question is, why did he translate? Instead of saying he appeared to him, again, it says he appeared upon him. So to really understand that, I want to explain a little bit more about the opening verse. I did not deal with this in Fruits of the Orchard. I did deal with it in Orchard of Delights. But here, it's very significant that the Targum Yerushalmi is translating not just that he appeared to him, but he appeared upon him. The Ishbitzer said what it meant in the other context was God is putting it upon Abraham to share this revelation, this realization that there's only one God in the world. But here, it has a different context. Here, God is appearing to Abraham, and the very interesting thing is it doesn't say what happened in that revelation. It just says he appeared to him, and there's no recounting of God speaking to Abram or what the message was. But we see that, I remember learning this from Reb Shlomo. In fact, this was the first Torah that I learned from Reb Shlomo, is the idea that Avram's name is not mentioned here. It says he appeared to him. Now, this is right after, and Rashi points it out, the Balaturim, that the last thing in the previous portion was the idea of the covenant of Brit Milah, and Avram circumcising himself and Yishmael and everyone else of the household. And the parsha ends and it begins here. And so the Midrash and all the commentaries say that, as it were, God was coming to pay a sick call, Bikur Cholim. That's why he came to Avram here, because Avram was 99 years old and he just circumcised himself. So not so simple. And so we're told that this was on the third day after the circumcision. And we're told that that's in any, let's say, operation, we're told that the third day is the hardest. And so here, God comes to visit Avram on the third day, and it's not just that he visited him, he appeared to him. And Reb Shlomo was teaching that this kind of revelation was beyond even Avram's name. Now, right at the end of last week's parsha, God changed his name from Avram to Avraham. But here he was going, in a sense, one step further and God was revealing himself to Avram and teaching him the level that's above even his name. When he got the name, he was told, you'll be an Av Hamon Goyim, you'll be a father of many nations. But here, God was revealing, we'll call it the Shoresh Neshama of Avram, the root of his soul, which is above even a name. So now we can understand a little bit, because this was a prophetic experience here. And it was such a high prophetic experience, the Torah doesn't even recall any words that were exchanged. And I think we can understand this I believe everyone can understand this in your own way, sometimes in prayer or meditation, we get beyond the words, we get beyond thought, and we're in this state of consciousness, which is what's called devekut, is just clinging to God, being one with God, above names, above words, above letters, just a pure experience of oneness with God. So that's how we understand what this revelation was. That's what God was revealing to him, was this intimacy that God had with Avram. And the prophet Isaiah, so God refers to Avram as Avram Ohavi, Avraham, the beloved of my soul. So this is a very, very intimate language. Avraham, the beloved of my soul. And so this revelation here is a prophetic revelation, but it's also a meditative revelation. And in a very, very deep way, Avram drew this revelation to himself through meditation. Now, why are we saying that? Because if you look at the words, it says he was sitting at the opening of the tent, meaning Avram was wide open. He had just made a covenant with God, or God, better said, made a covenant with him. And this is a whole different level of relationship. And so he was sitting at the opening of the tent. Avram was wide open, kechom hayom, like the heat of the day. How do we understand this? Avram's soul is on fire. Kechom hayom. The Midrash actually says that God made it incredibly hot out, so no guests would come to Avram, and Avram, who is recovering from the operation of a circumcision, was not really in the state to greet guests. But the next thing that happens is Avram sees 3 guests, and the Midrash says, Avram says, Hashem, I hope you'll pardon me, but I have business to take care of. I have to take care of these guests. So from that, we learn that greeting guests, hosting guests, is even a higher revelation than the Shekhinah. We learn it from this incident here. So now we'll go back to understand why the Targum Yerushalmi, is translating Elav as Alav. Not just he appeared to him, but he appeared upon him. Now here, the upon him means that the revelation was, as it were, coming from above, but then integrated totally into Avram's being. That's why it's not like to him, but upon him means it's like all around him. It's surrounding him, and it's entering into him. So here I've just found a fascinating connection between Elav and Alav. So now we're going to see something also very interesting. The very next verse says, V'yisa einav, and he lifted his eyes. Avram lifted his eyes. V'yera v'hinei shlosha anashim nitzavim alav. So Avram lifts up his eyes, and he sees 3 men standing on him, upon him. So you'd ask, well, that's a strange language. What does it mean they were standing on him? Alav. So here we can understand very, very deeply that when going back to the Ishbitzer, who said, when God appeared to him, he appeared Allah upon him, saying, Avram, it's upon you to spread the knowledge of one God in the world. So here Avram sees three strangers. It's even brought down that he thought they were pagans. And yet he interrupted this incredibly high revelation and experience with God to take care of these three strangers. And that's, I believe, why it says Allah here, is because Avram had totally integrated this idea that I need to spread the teachings of one God to everyone. Even after, on the third day from my Brit Milah, when I'm a little bit in pain here, I am going to run out and take care of these strangers. So it was on him. The idea of being an Av Hamon Goyim, being a father of many nations, makes it that Avram was responsible for the whole world. And we'll see how that plays itself out more. Now, we're going to go to a few sentences after this, where, let me just find which, it's in Genesis 18, Pasuk 9. So it says, now these are the three strangers who we later find out are angels. These are three angels. One came to tell Avram and Sarah that they'll have a son. One angel came to help heal Avram from the Brit Milah. And the other angel came to destroy Sodom. So it says in the 9th verse of the 18th chapter, V'yomru elav ayeh Sarah ishtecha. They said to him, meaning to Avram, where is Sarah, your wife? V'yomer hine ba'ohel. And he answered, behold, she is in the tent. So here we have something very interesting on the word elav. There are three dots above three of the four letters of elav. And if people want to look, it's in Fruits of the Orchard on page 60. There's a short Torah about what I am going to explain right now, so people can follow or can review afterwards, those who have the book. So for those who followed 70 Faces, so we know that one of the methods of revealing the inner dimensions of the Torah is when there are dots over letters in a word, which do not happen very frequently. It means, well, there's a hidden message here. So here on the word elav, there are three dots over three letters, the aleph, the yud, and the vav. And that spells, these three letters, aleph, yud, vav, spell ayo, which can be translated as where is he? Now here, in the verse that we read, the angels or the men are asking, where is Sarah, your wife? And the answer is in the tent. But here, the three letters that have dots is implying that they also asked Sarah, where is your husband Avram? Now, where here also means, how is he doing? Where is he holding? Who is he? So the sages learn from these three dots. They learn a simple, call it law of etiquette, derech eretz, that when a guest comes to a couple's home, it's appropriate for the person visiting to ask the man about his wife and to ask the wife about her husband. Because it's not explicit, it's only explicit that they asked Avram, where is Sarah? But it's implicit in the dots over the word elav. Here again, we have the word elav, that it's also, where is Avram? So all of this came from this discussion that we had last week about these two words, to him and upon him. And so here we see it appears like so many times right at the beginning of the parsha. Okay, now I want to get to the idea that Avram answers, she's in the tent, be'ohel. And what does that mean? So again, for those who have the book, you'll see on page 58, there's a whole Torah called In the Merit of Abraham and Sarah. And this is about how the holiday of Sukkot is in the merit of Avram and Sarah. Because when Avram greets the strangers, and this is in the same chapter we're dealing with, the 18th chapter, in the 2nd through the 4th verse. So Avram says, Yikach na ma'at mayim ve'rachatzu raglechem v'hishanu tachara eitz. So Avram said to them, please take some water and you'll be able to wash your feet from the long journey you've been on, and come and rest under this tree. So the sages say an amazing thing. They say, what does it mean, rest under this tree? So the simple is, yeah, rest under the tree in the shade. It's hot out. Remember, we learned the midrash that God made it very, very hot in order to try to save Avram from dealing with guests. Nonetheless, he ends up dealing with them. But the sages say on the merit of Avram taking care of the guests and giving them shade under the tree, all of Israel in the future would merit the holiday of Sukkot. Why? It's because of the schach above the sukkah. And for 7 days, we dwell in the shade of the sukkah. So it's an amazing statement on the merit of Avram having such Mesirat Nefesh, giving of himself to such a degree to take care of these absolute strangers, that by their resting under the tree, we merit the holiday of Sukkah. But then I point out that it's not just on Avram's merit, it's also on Sarah's merit. How is that? So we know from the end of last week's Parsha that Sarah actually in the Torah is called by two different names, actually three, because her name was originally Sarai, and then it was changed to Sarah, just when Avram's name was changed to Abraham. But she's also called Yizkeh. And it only appears one time. She's also called Yizkeh. And Rashi explains, what does this name mean? It's actually the same root as Chach. And it means that she was permuted with, almost dripping with Ruach HaKodesh. She had divine inspiration. And in fact, we're told, the sages say, that Sarah actually had a higher level of prophecy than even Avram. And that's why this name is mentioned of Yizkeh. And so this is connected to Sukkot because of the schach. So both on the merit of Avram and Sarah, we have this holiday called Sukkah. And also because she has this name, Yizkeh, because it's connected to Ruach HaKodesh. And we're told that during the evenings of Sukkah in the Beit HaMikdash, so they would do the ritual of Simchat Beit HaShoeva. They would go down to the Mei Shiloach, the water source that is in the city of David, and they would draw water, and they would, in a great procession, go back to the temple, and then they would literally celebrate all night long. And the sages said anyone who did not see, anyone who never experienced the simcha of Simcha Beit Shoeva has never actually experienced the ultimate of simcha. And the Mishnah gives over this just beautiful description of this celebration. And one of them is the sages ask rhetorically, what were they drawing? Because the name is Simchat Beit HaShoeva, which literally means the joy of the ceremony of drawing. But it doesn't say what they were drawing. Now we know that they were drawing water. And the next morning, after celebrating the whole night, the Kohanim would pour the water on the altar as a symbolic of our prayers that we're about to enter into the rainy season. And that's why in Shmini Atzeret, we stop saying Merida Tal, he makes the dew to fall, and we begin saying Mashiva Ruach or Merida Geshem. He makes the wind to blow and the rain to fall. So the sages said, well, okay, we know this. The sages knew this, but they asked the question anyways, what were they drawing? So instead of answering water, they answered Ruach HaKodesh. That the joy of Simcha Beit HaShoeva, a lot of it was produced by the music. And we know from the Tanakh that music was one of the main ways that the prophets of old would enter into a prophetic experience, was through music. So this is all connected to Sarah. Now we want to go back to Avram's answer. She's in the tent. So what's the deeper meaning she's in the tent? Well, the angels knew she was in the tent. They didn't have to really ask, where's your wife? They're angels. They understood she's in the tent. But they were asking Avram in order to endear his wife to him. Because he would answer, well, she's in the tent, meaning she's very modest. But here the tent has much deeper meaning. So this is a teaching from Rav Ginsburg. And he says like this, the word Ohel, the three letters of Ohel, Aleph, Hey, Lamed, stand for two different phrases that are connected. One is Or HaMeir La'atzmo. Or is the Aleph, HaMeir is the Hey, La'atzmo is the Lamed, which means a light that shines within a person. In other words, it's very inward. It's not perceived on the outside. It's not shared on the outside. It's an inner light. But that same three letters can also be interpreted as or Hamair Lezulat, a light that shines to the outside world, to other people. And so here, this is describing really who Avram and Sarah are. Now remember, going back to the word Elav, it's not just that the angels are asking Avram, where is your husband? Meaning, who is he? Where is he holding? But it's also, they're asking Sarah, where is your husband? Who is he? Do you know what level he's on? So here, the idea of the Ohel is very significant, because how did Avram and Sarah try to turn the whole world onto one God? So we're told that the way they did it was inviting people into their tent and serving them food and taking care of them and showing really concern for them and teaching them at the same time. And it was happening in the Ohel. So in one sense, if we want to share our light with the outside world, well, first we have to have a light. So the Ohel represents for everyone, not just Avram and Sarah, that everyone has to have both of these lights. We have to have an inner light, or Hama'ir La'atzmo, in order to be able to shine it out into the world, or Hama'ir Lazulat. And this is describing Avram and Sarah. They developed, they grew spiritually to the point that they were brimming with inner light, and then they were able to share it with the world. And this is very, very connected to all the Avot and the Imahot were shepherds, shepherdesses. Because when you're a shepherd, you spend a lot of time alone out in nature. And many of the prophets would go into the desert in order to develop their inner spiritual powers in order to be a fitting vessel for prophecy. So these are very, very important teachings for all of us. But this is the inner dimension of what it means that Sarah was in the tent. But now we're going to take it one step further and connect it to Sukkot. Because again, in the first Torah, in Fruits of the Orchard, it's all about Avram and Sarah's connection to Sukkot. And here, I'm looking, and the part I'm about to give over is actually not written in the book. But as I explained, that's what we're going to be doing. I'm going to be taking Torahs from Fruits of the Orchard, explaining it, but then adding information. So Ohel is Gematria 36. Be-Ohel, sometimes the Be means two. So again, I learned this from Rav Ginsburg. Be-Ohel means in the tent, but it can mean two aspects of the tent. And that's what we just learned. An inner light and an outer light, or Hama'ir La'atzmo, or Hama'ir Lazulat. Two types of light in the Ohel. So what's interesting, we're going to do a progression now of 18, 36, and 72. When we, and this is something we learned last week, I believe already. We learned a very, very beautiful connection between the first command of God to Avram, which is Lech Lecha, go to yourself. Go out, leave your land. Lech lecha me'artzecha, mimoladetecha, mebeit avicha, Ela oretz asher areka. Go to yourself from your land, from your birthplace, and from your father's house to the land I will show you. And we learned that lech lecha is the same idea that we're talking about, this inner light and the outer light. Avram is told on a physical level, leave. You're going to have to leave. You're going to journey physically. But this outer journey has to be mirrored on an inner journey. That's what it means. Lech lecha, go to yourself. So we learned last week that when we shake lulav, so in a sense, we're reenacting this command that's given not just to Avram, it's given to all of us, this idea of an outer journey and an inner journey. So when we shake lulav, for those who were here last week, we shake out, that's lech, and then we draw it in, that's the lecha. Lech, lecha. Lech, lecha. So since we're shaking in 6 directions, and we shake 3 times in each direction, so that's 18. That's chai. That, for those who are here at the beginning, that's the song that we just sang, Lechai Olamim, to the one who gives life and lives forever. The living God who lives forever. Lechai Olamim. So Bit Ohel is 2 aspects of this Ohel. But this Ohel is really is a tent of light. So if you take 18 times 2, 1 in the merit of Avram and 1 in the merit of Sarah, so we have 36. That's the Ohel. Now we can just double this because, well, actually, we'll start with the 18. So we shake really 18 times, 3 in each direction. And according to the Arizal, during Sukkot, we say Hallel every day. There are 2 versions how many times we shake the lulav during Hallel. By Ashkenazim, they shake 8 times. I'm not going to go into all the details, but 8 different times we shake the lulav in the midst of Hallel. Hallel is a series of psalms, very joyous psalms that we say on holidays. But the Arizal, and this is how Hasidim do it, Nusach Sfard and Sfardim, only shake 4 times. So, and we're shaking 18 times. So 18 times 4 is 72. So we're actually shaking 72. Now, how is this connected to what we're talking about? If Ohel is 36 and Bit Ohel is 2 times 36, well, 2 times 36 equals 72. Equals 72. So when we read it in the text, Avram's simple answer, she's in the tent, in the tent. So here we're just learning deeper ideas about what does this tent represent, more than just a very simple storyline kind of answer. She's in the tent. It has many, many meanings. As we know, every word, every verse in the Torah has many, many, many meanings. Shivim panim l'Torah, 70 faces to the Torah. And so one last thing is when the Zohar, see, this is where the Arizal gets it. The Zohar says that this idea of shaking 4 times and that it equals 72. This is the inspiration for the Arizal, is coming from the Zohar. And so, but the Zohar explains that we have a tradition that in every generation there are 36 hidden tzaddikim. So these are the tzaddikim, these are the righteous ones that are in the tent. They're hidden. They have this inner light, and because of this inner light and their merit, the whole world exists. But the Zohar says also there's also 36 revealed tzaddikim in every generation. So 36, which is Ohel, is both 36 hidden tzaddikim. This is the inner light, or Hameir La'atzmo, and the revealed tzaddikim, or Hameir Lezulat. So 36 and 36 equals 72. So this goes back to this whole idea that in the merit of Avram and Sarah, we merit the holiday of Sukkot. So hopefully everyone followed. There are a lot of connections here, but this is just a classic example of how a seemingly simple word like tent, ohel, all of a sudden has all of these additional meanings. Okay, so now, for those who have the book, on page 68 is a relatively short Torah, but this is very, very connected to what we're talking about. And so in the 21st chapter of Genesis, the 33rd verse, I want to find it here. (21:33). So it says like this: Vayita Eshel beber Sheva, vayikra sham b'shem Hashem el olam. Abraham planted an Eshel in Beersheba. Now, Eshel usually is translated as terebinth. It's a type of desert type of tree that grows specifically in desert conditions. And there he called on the name of God, the God of the world. Now, what's important to point out, again, Vayikra Sham B'Shem Hashem, he called in the name of the four-letter name of God, the God of the world. Now, the word, the name of God, Aleph Lamed, El, is the closest in Hebrew to the translation of God in English. And that's why it appears here, because it's referring to the four-letter name of God. Avram is calling in the four-letter name of God, but he calls him the God of the world, Kel Olam. So the first thing is the name of this tree, Eshel. So the sages see a deeper meaning here, that it's not, they don't even understand it, that he planted a physical tree. He might have planted a physical tree there, but they interpret this, the three letters of Eshel. The Aleph stands for Ochel, food. The Shin stands for Shtia, drink. And the Lamed stands for Lena, sleeping. So they understood that, what does it mean that he planted a tree in Beersheba? Avram spent many, many years in Beersheba. And that's where he was doing a lot of Avram and Sarah, call it their kiruv work, of drawing people into the understanding of one God. And as we mentioned before, how did they do it? They did it by hosting guests. They invited them into their tent. And here it's understood that Avram, in a sense, made a hotel. It wasn't just in his private tent. He made a whole retreat center where he fed people, he gave them to drink, and he gave them a place to sleep. He gave them a place to sleep. So I'm just thinking that specifically, I'm thinking about once I went to Toronto for to teach and to raise money for my organization. And at that time, I didn't have very many contacts, but one of the contacts got me in touch with people who had a very, very big house, but they built a whole basement specifically for guests. And it was a known thing that when people came to Toronto to teach or raise money for Jewish causes, you go to this place, and that's where you could stay. So this is in the spirit of planting an eshel in Beersheba. It's a beautiful thing. When they built their house, they built it in a way that they could do what Avram and Sarah did. I never forgot that. I've experienced that in other cities also, but in many cases, I know where I'm staying. But here it was just everyone stays at this apartment. Okay, so now what does it mean? Avram called on the name of God, the God of the world. So Rav Ginsburg points out that grammatically, if it was supposed to mean God of the world, it should have said Kel HaOlam, God of the world. But it says Kel Olam, which means, it's hard to say it in English, but God is the world. God is the world. So this is a concept in Chassidut that all is God and God is all. Now it sounds like, well, that's just saying the same thing. God is all is God. But it's not exactly the same thing. All is God is, in a sense, but we're going to make a very, very important distinction, that pantheism is that what is God, or what is the divine force in the universe? It's a sum total of the universe. That is what God is. So when we say all is God, it sounds like pantheism. But because we have the other half, which is God is all, so this is telling us from our perspective, as it were, looking from below to the world above, so all is God. But God, as it were, looking from above, is above the world. God is not just the sum total of all the parts of the world. God is above time and space. God is transcendent. God is above everything. So Rav Ginsburg was teaching, this is what Avram was meditating on, was the realization is it's not just that God is all, all is God, but that God is all, that God is the world, but God is more than just the world. So there's another connection here to Sukkot. And that is that the numerical value of the name Kale, Aleph Lamed, is 31. We know that when we shake lulav, we're shaking to the 6 directions. So if you take this name of God and you multiply times 6, you get 186. What's the significance of 186? It's the word makom, place, space. So now remember, this is the holiday of Sukkot. So when we're shaking the lulav to the 6 directions, these are the 6 directions of space, of makom. And the ideal place to shake lulav, of course, is in our sukkah, where we're dwelling for 7 days. We're creating this, we'll call it divine space, where we feel surrounded by God's energy. God is here, God is there, God is everywhere, up, down, all around. That's what shaking lulav is about. That's what Sukkot is about. So the Arizal, based on this, said that one of the kavanot for shaking lulav is this idea of that all is God and God is all, represented by this name Kale. And so he said, when you shake to each one of the directions, it's that this name represents the whole secret of space. Now, we'll just go one step further, because here, Avram is calling in the name of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. So if you take the 4 letters of God's name and you multiply them by themselves, in other words, Yud equals 10. So 10 times 10 is 100. Hey times Hey, 5 times 5 is 25. Vav times Vav, 6 times 6 is 36. The second Hey times Hey is 25. So 125 and 36 and 25 equals 186 is makom, is place. And this is why these 2 Torahs that I just gave over, that one of the ways that we refer to God is by calling God Hamakom, the place. And this we learn a very important Rashi. Right before God reveals the 13 midot of Rachamim to Moshe, the 13 attributes of compassion after the sin of the golden calf. So God says to Moshe, I will hide you. No, actually, it says first, God says, there is a place with me, and I will hide you in the cleft of the rock, and I will, as it were, put my hand in front of you, and I will pass in front of you and reveal the 13 midot of Rachamim. So on the words, there is a place with me. So Rashi says that this teaches us hu hamakom shel ha'olam v'ha'olam eino makomo. God is the place of the world, but the world is not his place. This is like saying he is the place of the world. All God is all. No, all is God. But the world is not his place, is like saying God is all. God is all, but he's above anything that we can perceive or understand or contemplate. So this is all implied in this idea that Avram is calling out in the name of God. The God is the world. God is the world. Hu hamakom shel olam, v'haolam einu makomo. And so in the Talmud, every once in a while, that's how they refer to God. Hamakom. And of course, we know that the place that we use it the most is that when we're paying what's called a shiva call, where we're going to the house of someone in mourning. And so the traditional saying, at least among Ashkenazim, is Hamakom yinachem etchem betoch shar Avlei Tzion v'Yerushalayim, referring to God as the place. The place. He will give you comfort among the mourners of Zion and Yerushalayim. So they asked, why do we refer to God as a makom, as a comfort to a mourner? And so one of the answers is when we lose a loved one, it's like all of a sudden there's like an empty space in our lives, in our hearts. This person like filled this space in our life, and now they're not there. So we say, Hamakom yinachem etchem. God will help you fill that empty space. It's a very beautiful understanding of why we use this saying to comfort a mourner, that God will help you fill this space. Okay, as always, there is a lot more, but I think we'll end the class now, and then we'll do our usual discussion group. So we'll end with a bracha. We'll end with a bracha. That we always feel that we're in God's place. That the world is God. It is his place. In fact, we're told that that's one of the reasons for creation, because God had a passion to have a dwelling place in this world. And so I want to bless all of us that we make a place for God in our hearts, in our world. You remember they came to the Kotzker Rabbi, I believe he was like 5 or 6 years old, and they asked him, like you would ask a 5-year-old, where is God? And the Kotzker Rabbi said, anywhere you let him in, that's where God is. So they expected like a kid answer. They got a very grown-up answer. Anywhere that you let him in. So Bezrat Hashem, we make a place for God in our hearts, and Bezrat Hashem, he'll make a place for us in his heart.